staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Alrighty then. I think we're here. Let me see. I'm a little loud. Welcome to Ella's Whistleblowers Time's Out. Here on Studio A. Ella had emergency things to do, so since I produced for her, she asked me if I would take over her spot, which I would, and I am. My name is Mona. I'm the Feral Hippie on Studio B, 2 to 4, Monday through Friday, just in case you need to know. Alright, so I am here. I am over the new Skype has made it so outrageous. And of course, if anybody knows Ella's show, we just don't always have a get-to-go anyway. Because that's the way it's all working. The transhumanizing machines trying to train us to make us more dumber, more not in control of what we feel like doing. Remember way back when the computers were supposed to be here to assist us, to do everything we directed it to do. Well, I don't see much of that anymore. No, it has a mind of its own, and we all know who runs the listening section of it, so they can know every little nook and cranny and voice variants. Oh, to keep a schematic on us. That's the only word I can think of to put there. Oh. Now, I want to thank everybody who has donated yet so far on the 7th day of September 2018 for helping us try to reach goal, because it's really vital to a lot of us producers and hosts and guests that we keep Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com going. Yes. May it run for as long as there are people to hear us and internet to get it through to. It is. It's like every day is prayers of certain things that you just don't want to lose. But we're losing it so much on this planet, it really does kind of tick you off. Well, it ticks me off. You know, the rest of you don't have to get ticked off about it. You can wear your blinders and you can keep on going forward in your repetitious style to the idea that you are doing something because you are being trained. You were trained to follow their protocol. Natural law has no real idea of man's protocol in the least whatsoever. And it's not winning at this moment. It's still in faction. It's still making it happen. But the people that are trying to make it happen, the ones who know, are diligently trying to unprogram the rest of the masses. It is not an easy job. It's not an easy thing at all. Sure, we like to get the truth out there. Sure, we want guests out there to come and tell us their story. No problem. Except when the guests don't want to come. I did ask the Crow, and I don't mean our Crow, I mean Max Ingham, but he's doing a ceremony, so I caught him at the wrong time, but that's fine. I still listen and like Max Ingham, because he's out there trying to set and change the protocol too. Letting people know what the heck is going on. What does he witness to see by his design of what reality is or not? Same with the rest of us. And we're all allotted to our own individual opinion, sure. But if it's harming everything else that's going on, how do you recognize how to not feed into it? Because that's just what everything is. Everything has to be a battle. Oh, no, it's not. Oh, yes, it is. Oh, no, it's not. Oh, yes, it is. Trump, no Trump. Trump, no Trump. He's just a puppet. He might be getting a few things here and there, but how many signatures before his face comes out in the open? Does there have to be? Let's see, Rothschild. Gosh, for some reason I can't think of all those Uber Goobers. All those Uber Goobers that are really in charge. I hear the Rothschilds are what own the chemtrails, and that they've been doing this for the last 40 years. Oh, there isn't much that they don't own, okay? And that means us too. Yep. It's all for the banks. It's all for this illusion of might makes right. I got the power. I'm going to get you before you have the chance to get me. Well, what kind of stupid paranoia is that? If you haven't misbehaved, you wouldn't feel guilty to have to be concerned of if somebody's going to retaliate against you or not. Now, of course, that's just my opinion, okay? And anything I say is entertainment use only, yes indeedy. Because I'm just telling you what my theory of opinion is. It doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. Nope. It can be upside down and inside out, and it can still be right, but it still can be wrong. I won't place judgment on it, but I sure kind of like look at the things and go, whoa, whoa, what a waste. What a waste of trying to coexist on a beautiful planet that nobody gives a flying leap about. At all. At all. Do you take the time and energy to shut the water off if you're not really using it? Or do you just let it run down the sink? Huh? I mean, constantly. I see so much waste because nobody's been directed. Nobody's been taught. It's a waste not, want not in my world. Because there are limits to this 3D. Sure, life is limitless, but there are still boundaries. There's still limits to all the equations here. If I plant a tomato seed, it's going to take 4 months to get tomatoes. Yeah, so get your seed packs real quick. We got the heirloom seeds. It's time to start thinking about building greenhouses and putting in gardens. I've been listening to Stop the Crime with Deborah Tarvez, I think that's her name. And for what the water conditions in that are, Rockefellers, Rothschilds, Westinghouse, whoever they are, they're all the same. They're all corporate entities who have stolen our birthright, our children, and made us all sacrificial. Or cows, or whatever kind of livestock you want to pretend you are, okay? To where you are being directed and told by their profit. Not the true value of what, who, and why you are. No, 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 not allowed to have that. And then the illusion that we pretend to think is what we should be to collect the goals, like the actors and actresses, and the ones who make $1 million off the internet. Okay, I can see franchising. I can see trying to get an idea of how to make extra cash through the internet. But if 80% of humanity is not seriously employed, they're not gaining their true worth, how do these corporations stay afloat? How do they keep going? Heck, before Walmart came, I knew there was something called Mom Paws. You know, that where the mommy and daddy were putting it together and made it a family business, and that it was neighborly, and that you cared about each other and you saw old friends when you went into the store. Now it's you order it online and it comes to your front door. I mean, where have we really put ourselves? Where do we want our future to go? Because at the rate it is now, it's still back into the TV dinners. Put your children in front of the TV and go do something else. Are you interacting with your children? Are you trying to show them and help them learn to take care of themselves? Or are you letting them just go with society, along with the flow, that they're going to be corralled and directed and programmed to work for the system that's out annihilating humanity and the planet Earth. You know, hey, aren't you proud? Don't you just love the idea that the only jobs that people can get now are at Burger King, Waffle House, and Kmart? Aren't you just so proud? And the entrepreneurs can't do much because if they have to go to the bank for loans and that, they'll just tack on 75% interest. Yeah, I kind of exaggerated there, but you know what I mean. Yep. They just are not letting nature take its course. Instead, they're synthesizing all our existence. Honestly, all of our existence. Everybody who's got their iPhones and their cell phones and their computers and that, have you ever tried recently to write a note? To literally use your hand and a writing instrument onto a piece of paper and manifest a note? It's not easy anymore now, is it? It's so much simpler if we do it this way and ignore the rest of what's going on. Of how we're losing our faculties of knowledge, of how we can actually accomplish something that might actually benefit ourselves and help get others to know basically what might be happening. Like writing down a list for groceries. I mean, have you had a pen and paper in hand for a while? How many children actually take notes anymore? I don't have any around, so I can't ask them. I don't know. Oh, they'll just memo it on the phone. Oh, it's there on Facebook. Oh, I say, wait a minute, let me get my picture in on this. Yes, can you see me? Can you hear me? I mean, that's exactly what they're probably feeling, because nobody's really justifying their existence. No, they're just being programmed into following somebody else's ideals. Like this transracial, or not racial, sexual, what the Common Core is putting out there to our babies. Making sex a priority instead of common sense that glue and sawdust can help you put two pieces of wood together. You know, I mean, come on. Okay, that kind of thing. No. My favorite class was home economics. It was in junior high school. Heck yeah. I learned how to cook. I learned how to sew. And it's actually kind of funny because that was in the end of the 60s. And after that, I don't think they even gave it to anybody any longer. But I taught my sons how to cook and sew. Because I wanted to make darn good and sure, because I knew by the time they were adults, the women were not going to placate to that same system like their mothers did. Yeah, I feel like I'm in almost an extinction generation here. And they've been trying to extinct us for quite some time. Through our food. When I started reading the ingredients labels more and more, I'm like, oh my effing gosh. Oh, can you say diabetes? Oh, can you say immune dysfunction? Oh, can you say hormonal dysfunction? How about sterilization? All from these lovely foods that you eat that are prepackaged and ready to go. And we put such flavors and additives into it that it'll actually preserve you. So you won't have to be embalmed in the end or something like that. I mean, come on, this is downright poison that we're up against. I don't even want to look at a container of ice cream. I mean, and I like ice cream. But I've literally had to stop and look and see and investigate to the nitty-gritty of what these foods are. I don't want to say I have a delicate system, but I have a delicate system. Oh, I'm so delicate. No, 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 no. Not like that. It's just that there's inherited cause and reason to follow what I put in my mouth. Make sure there's certain things omitted and other things added a little extra. And I'm a pretty healthy individual considering the rest of the stuff that's going on. And I know a lot of it is attitude too, so yepper. I'm not one to go ahead and think that I don't have control of my being every way I can. Because I cheat every now and then, and I like red meat. But I'm not going to buy it from the grocery store because I don't know where they're getting it from. And there's only like 2 places I will eat beef, all 3. Because I know that this area has the farm-fed, raised cows. So I'm all for that. But any commercial products that any restaurant or anybody else has, forget it. They're finding alien meat in their stuff that they can't even identify. I don't want that in my system. Oh my gosh. I have enough of a time trying to sleep and trying to keep to the point where I feel like getting something done, because reality strikes that we're here to create during our living existence. You can create something really, really raunchy that's going to attack back, or you can create something really fun and see what kind of parties get created. You know what I mean? Or do nothing. Be a vegetable. Hey. And what kind of vegetable are you? Oh, goodness. It really is kind of funny seeing. Now, I don't get out much. I really don't. And that's on choice. Okay. I mean, if I really wanted to, I could go all kinds of places. I could see what's going on out there. But for what I see out there, I kind of get discouraged. And I kind of wonder why. Why? And then I think way back into the early 80s when I had my children with sandwich boards on saying stop the fluoride, it causes osteoporosis, is not really something for your teeth. There was no computers. There was no other things except newspapers, and I was lucky if I got any kind of uprising in that or not. But I was always at city council. They knew me. They knew me well. And here I had doctors, scientists, and other individuals backing me with all the printed information that says what is happening now with all our pituitary glands, like the calcification because of the fluoride, which makes you can't use your intuition or think, or use that spirit guidance that you were born with. Oh yeah, we gotta have fluoride in our drinking water now, don't we? Because I knew it wasn't good for teeth. But here I come, and I was a late bloomer to the internet kind of stuff. 2010 was my virgin run for the internet. Because Verizon wanted to charge me $6 a minute to call Africa. And my daughter and I were real close for a while there, and so I'm like, oh geez. For the amount of money, a half hour would be on the phone, I could get a little notebook. So that's what I'm talking on now, is my little Dell notebook. And I could get Skype. Oh, so I've had Skype since 2010. And so I could call and talk to my daughter. And then, of course, I had to get on Facebook, and she was on Facebook. And, I mean, that's about the only thing I go to. Yeah, I have a Twitter account, but Twitter is, like, to me, not usable. It's not right at the moment kind of thing at all. And then I started seeing the fluoride agenda. I'm like, whoa, how many years later was this? And it's finally more to the masses. How great was that? And I'm sure somebody had to start it, so I guess maybe I was part of that starting it. Because it was wrong. It's wrong. It's just all these corporations making money off of industrial waste. Oh. They can't think of another way of not maybe making that waste, let alone how to process it some other way. I mean, would it be harmful if you mixed it with concrete? There's all kinds of ways, because some kind of fluoride is natural. But this is a whole completely different chemical setup to my knowledge of remembering way back when. Because it causes osteoporosis in the elderly, and you know, they did the testing on the geriatrics, which is anybody over 80. Oh, sure, they had healthy teeth, a long and healthy life. Yeah, right. They were at the end of their days. So everything's a lie. It's all a sales pitch. It's all an idea that they want you to have what you want to think is the very best and that you can't live without it at all. You have to spend double for it. Like NASA, when they buy a screw, it's $37 instead of 37 cents. Oh, yeah. Because even when I was like 16 years old, I knew a scientist and a designer that was already making water filters for the sinks. And that was back in the mid-70s. So they knew what was going on. They knew that these industries didn't care, and that whatever wastewater and idea of just processing the phosphate mines and the things like that, no, that didn't kill off the central part of the Gulf of Mexico. No, there's no dead zones out there. There's like 4 now. And I probably really would not back down if anybody wanted to say to me that the chain, the ocean current chain, hasn't been broken. I'm sure it's been broken. And now there's how many different kinds of tides? I didn't know there were so many, like red, blue, purple, green tides. And each one has its own toxic effects to whatever it is that it's toxic to. And of course, a lot of them are just all toxic to life. Like what's been happening to the coral reefs. Yep, the water. The water, I know. I started earlier talking about the Deborah thing. But where she was saying, now this kind of concerns me. And I wish I could get the video and play it for you, but I don't have that ability. Anybody with a well, now this is what Rothschilds, or I think it's Rothschilds, one of these big guys, you know, who is in charge of all this. They're going to go after land property rights of wells. And they're going to set a meter up on them. And if you use over your allotted amount, then your house and property will be taken from you. And so as your house and property has been taken from you, they will retake you like they did the Native Americans to somewhere else, some kind of reservation or something. Could be a FEMA camp, could not be. I don't know. I don't have the whole facts of the information right in front of me. But this is what I just learned today. And so, you think like that. You've worked 40 years. The house has been, it'd be like a Bundy incident, you know what I mean? I would think so. Because who are these a-holes coming in and telling me what I should do or not? They've even got special police forces to come and take care of the people who aren't listening. Through the forestry services. Okay, now, is that the foreign training that happens in this country? Are those the ones who get directed and told this is what needs to be done and can't speak a lick of English? And then, if you try to protect yourself for that, you can't because you're a terrorist. Because you are not following their rules and their laws. This is what we've allowed our country to become. Because we've all been enslaved with ideas that we're supposed to be living under somebody else's rule. No, it's live now. Okay. And so, just to the fact of discovering that all these corporations have been lying to us, and that we keep falling for the protocol, like fluoride. Yes. That fluoride is going to strengthen your teeth. No. Fluoride will harden your pituitary gland where you lose all your intuition and your spirit guide, your third eye. And it also causes osteoporosis, which is the thinning and the sponging of your skeletal system. So that would mean that all your support is being withdrawn from you. It's not there to do what it needs to be done because it's being told it has to do a certain other thing. So it's crazy. Yeah, so far it's me. Oops. So far it's just me. And I can be thinking for Ella, to whom I'm covering right now. Covering for. Okay. So, code is code. Let's see. You get tired of coding. Oh, okay. Oh, she's talking in the chat. Talking in the chat. Yay. There's more. There is. Okay, beam me on. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is a person who wants to fight for life also. Yeah, let's bring her on. Host here at Revolution. So we'll see if her bubbles quit bubbling. Yeah, her bubbles quit bubbling. Bubbling.
Bubbling. The boobling.
Well, welcome, Bridgette.
Well, welcome. So you're filling in for Ella, the whistleblower?
Yeah, just for this evening. She had special arrangements she had to take care of.
Oh.
So, yeah. And that's okay. I mean, I'd be here anyway. You know, but I've been complaining about how they have put the fluoride into the water, and that I was watching earlier. Did I send you that video about Deborah Tarvas about the water thing?
Yeah, no, I've been following her for a long time. I've been getting her email for like, I don't know, 6 years now.
Really?
Yeah.
I think I was, but it didn't keep going. I think my email keeps changing. It'll show up 2 days ago, a post that wasn't there 2 days ago.
Well, you know, it's really interesting this week. It's been interesting to watch Google and mostly Google, Microsoft, Skype. You know, they've all been like making upgrades and stuff, and then they want you to agree to all this stuff, and you have to keep like, you know, canceling it because it's like, no, I'm not agreeing to that. Today I got this weird error thing. I was trying to get on Facebook, and I had this error throw up from Microsoft that basically said, click here. So, so any kind of error report will go to us, and we can, you know, figure it out. And I was like, no. You know what? Because that's probably this sneaky permission thing for you to collect something else on me. And it's like, I'm not going to do it. No. Forget it.
They try to do that on my phone.
Oh, did they?
To get into your contacts. I'm like, I don't think so.
Yeah. Ignore.
Yeah,
not doing them. Yeah, so the news this week, woo, is it heating up?
Which is that?
Well, just like all the political news. We'll talk a little bit political because I know Ella's more on the political side. But
yeah, the John McCain thing.
Well, I mean, the thing is probably I don't know, I think he probably shot himself. But they say that he could have also been taken to Guantanamo and firing squad, that he might have been the first one for the military tribunals.
I won't believe it unless I see it, okay?
But anyway, so it's like super heating up, so all this shit is going down. And there was one of the, I don't know if you... I fell off for a minute.
Yeah, I saw that.
Back on, it was just a blip.
I'm like, oh, what button didn't you push? Or did you push?
No, it's the computer likes to do whatever it wants these days. Anyway, so they're showing this in the hearing for the Kavanaugh. Boy, have they been giving Kavanaugh, like, giving it to him. Like hours and hours and hours. The Democrats are asking him the stupidest questions of all time. It's like, you know what? Just confirm the guy, because, you're going to have to. And you can't find anything wrong with him. He hasn't answered anything wrong. And he's super knowledgeable for the Supreme Court position,
Okay.
But it was interesting because Lindsey Graham, he kind of like, well, he asked him questions about basically military tribunals.
Whoa.
And to see how he was going to answer. And so QAnon is saying that it's because they're testing him, because, they're going to have to do military tribunals. They're coming up. And the Supreme Court is probably, going to be involved in that.
And this is the Democrats asking that question, because most of them are, like Hillary and all that, are Democrats.
Right.
They're going after those, so...
Well, some of them are kind of on the, they're on the good side, and then there's a lot on the bad side. But there's 35, I think, senators in Congress that have resigned, and they haven't refilled the seats.
Whoa.
Yeah, no, it's serious. Like, it's going down. Like, they're running, there's the ones that have the most to lose, if this all goes down, the evil ones, the deep state or whatever you want to call them, they're the ones that are still throwing down and fighting. And I think they're the ones, that are causing, that one doctor said that it was the Ebola outbreak. But, there was on that plane that landed at JFK, he got like a thing through, and he was talking, he wrote an article. There's a journalist that took his information, and he said when he was there at JFK Airport watching some of the people coming off, he said there were like over 100 people that were sick, and he said some of them were bleeding. He said he said it was 100% Ebola. And I mean, he said it's not that hard to figure out, but he had to escape there. And he said he was most shocked about the fact that all the people that were there to kind of manage the situation were collecting, phones and video cameras and all this other stuff and trying to erase information or, confiscate them. And he kind of like sneaked away so that he could, tell the public about what's going on. And then, so then it gets even crazier. So it's like, what kind of viruses are they, throwing aboard planes? Or, what was that one show? I'm going to call it Fringe.
I loved Fringe. They took it off Netflix. One of my favorite series of TV.
I know. I love the Mad Hatter Doctor. Anyway, so on Fringe, I think they had an episode where somebody was injecting people with viruses, and then they would send them out in the public. They would, take them and throw them out in the public just to see how fast, the outbreaks would be. So, and these were, bad guys as well, trying to control the planet. But, so today, this morning, there's 2 more planes that came in from Germany and France this morning, that also had people on it that had the same what they're calling the flu, which is this one doctor that was in the underground media said is not the flu.
I heard somebody say it was measles.
No. Then they had 5 planes on Southwest that they had people with measles outbreak. Because the planes were going back and forth in Texas. And
so they set one contaminated person on each plane, and that's how fast it acquired. Well, because they were flying from overseas, right? So that could be 14 hours.
No. This is totally different. The measles thing is totally different than the flu stuff. So we have a total of 1 plane from Dubai that came to JFK yesterday that is believed to be an outbreak of Ebola, but they allowed some of the passengers to go. There was like 550 people on board that one. 100 of them have been like quarantined, and I think like several of them were bleeding from the eyes and nose and everything by the time they landed. And they've like totally quieted it up. They're saying it's the flu. And on the mainstream media, they're saying only 10 people had it and went to the doctor, right?
Yeah, right. Spreading it more.
Well, then this morning, a flight from Germany and a flight from France arrived in the United States. I don't know the details of where they landed, but they had the same kind of symptoms on both of those planes that they had on the Dubai plane. Then on top of it, Southwest came out and said that they had 5 planes that had contamination from one guy who had measles, who boarded the plane and then went through all the stops, and the stops were through Texas. And there were five stops where people got off and got on, and he stayed on the plane. So the thing is, he and that stuff, you can get measles. I mean,
well, they recycle the air, and then they use the air from the engines too. So they're getting all kinds of polluted, let alone what the environment is with the radiation and the ash.
Yeah. No, I mean, the whole thing's crazy, but to have all these planes all of a sudden, and it's all I can think about is some of these, more kind of underground X-Files, Fringe, where I've seen that this has been done before.
Well, I don't doubt it in the least. But then you also want to think, who else was on those planes? Were they trying to just take one out and just decided to make it a massive thing? Or, you know what I mean?
Well, this is the thing. Here in Reno, we have Reno Tahoe International Airport. And so as soon as it happened from Dubai to JFK, I started calling people I knew. I'm like, you realize we have an international airport. Like, you realize how many people at that Dubai airport may have been, maybe one of those really, really sick people that's bleeding that one underground doctor is saying that was Ebola that came off JFK. How do we know that not a whole bunch of other people were sick at the Dubai airport, and how many other planes, are going to end up landing at the international airports? And it's interesting, to talk to people because they don't get it. Like, they don't get it at all. And I had one person say, well, I'm not scared and I'm not afraid. I said, do you really get Ebola? I mean, I said, do you understand what Ebola is? She goes, well, isn't it like food poisoning? I said, it's not like food poisoning. I said, what happens is it gets into your body and it liquefies all your organs. And so you just bleed out. You just bleed out until you bleed out, until you're totally liquid.
Right.
And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah. So if this is the deal, if there is an outbreak, which I think there's some kind of outbreak that's going on right now in the U.S. After I started hearing the Ebola one, I went to the grocery store and made sure and stocked up about stuff, that I could utilize for 3 weeks, coconut oil and all kinds of stuff. So if things get really funky, I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to have anybody. And today it was like I had to go somewhere, and it was like I had all these like Purell wet wipes, and my friend goes, do you want a mask? And we were laughing. I'm like, I might start wearing a mask in public. just because I have no idea what people have anymore.
Exactly.
And, you can get from just, let's talk about vaccines. It's been proven that a dog or cat vaccine lasts it off, I'm just going to say it was off-gassed, but I'm kind of tired today. But it sheds, is what they call it. They call it a shedding. And so it can shed for like 7 to 10 days. So so the saliva, the pee, the urine, everything, all the fluids of the dog or the animals. And so if you have your animals in the house after you have them vaccinated, and you have, obviously you don't have vaccines to protect you from those animal viruses. You can actually get those animal viruses like parvo and other stuff and have a weird disease like that they'll call in the medical field like autoimmune system disease.
Right.
Because they don't have a blood test for parvo for people. But you picked up parvo from your dog and so it sucks because they don't even tell you that how many other viruses you could get. So I was talking to a friend of mine and he's like, well, because I've had herpes, smallpox, chickenpox, measles, mumps, shingles, they're all like, the same kind of virus.
Right.
They're just a little bit different. But they're the same thing. They're like some kind of sore that swells up and has fluid in it, sometimes pus, and then eventually, they go away. So he said, well, because I've had herpes, the doctor said that I should have the shingles vaccine. And he said, I know, what do you think about that? And I said, but okay, how many people are you around? You have a household full of people? Well, you're going to be off shedding the virus for 7 to 5 to 10 days, which means that you can give shingles to somebody else. And it's not just passing through their system. Now it's a virus, right? And they're going to get shingles.
Well, the worst thing is that they started making the children get a chickenpox vaccination because shingles are the next thing. If their body couldn't get rid of the chickenpox, as adult becomes shingles. Yeah. It's all a stress-related kind of occurrence.
Well, the thing is, it's a nervous virus.
I know what they are. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so the thing is, when I was a kid and the neighbor kids had chicken pox, my mom would call them and go, until we realized our family has like a immunity to those viruses. And so we're probably carriers, but I'm considered what's called a strep and staph carrier, which is, I have all those kinds of probably, antibodies against those viruses for some reason.
Right.
So they kept trying to give us the smallpox vaccination when we were kids, and it just wouldn't take at all. And then they ran us through some testing, and they were like, you guys have a weird family because you guys are like naturally immune to, these kinds of viruses. And so my mom didn't want us to get too old without getting chicken pox. So every time somebody in the neighborhood would get chicken pox, she'd call up and go, hey, can the girls come over for a slumber party?
Yeah, I know, right? I did the same thing.
Did you? You sent your kids off to contaminated areas?
Over to my house.
Oh, that's funny.
It's over with because I knew that the human body has to fight its infections. It has to learn how, but it should do it in an organic manner, not a predisposed one through injection.
Right. I mean, how they developed, a lot of people don't know this, but how they developed the vaccine for smallpox, basically, they found that women who milked cows would get what's called cowpox. Okay. And they would get like a breakout, which is like a pox, a sore or whatever type. And they would get it. And then they were ultimately in every town where they had milkmaids who had cowpox, never got the smallpox, even though everybody else, around them would get it. And they realized that, that cowpox was like a natural immunity, to the other types of poxes, right?
Right, the virus.
So that's how they first started inoculating people, is they would actually take Well, two things. They would take they would try to, have kids and other people milk cows, right, so that they could get cowpox. And then when there were smallpox outbreaks, they would cut open the sores, and then they would, kind of stick it into where a little bit of blood on the body, kind of cut a little bit and stick it in there to try to give the person the virus ahead of the game before the virus mutated in their system. It is, isn't it? But eventually the vaccine for smallpox came from cowpox, and so that's what people get.
Interesting, because I have one of them.
You've had a cowpox?
Well, the smallpox.
Oh, yeah.
They, did that to us. Yeah. I don't think that I can still see the thing, but still, I know that vaccinations have destroyed my daughter's system.
Well, the thing is, in 91, they changed them. So anybody that's gotten, like we got old school vaccines.
Right.
And anyone after 91, or you're getting vaccines after 91, then you're going to have some serious problems. Because, number one out the gate is autoimmune system disease. And that just pyramids into anything. Whatever you get is going to, just go off the charts.
Well, and then it's a new situation that's supposedly genetically involved. Some kind of, I don't have the information in front of me because I have the symptoms in that too, because it's a genetic thing. And I just know that from her international flying and the many injections that she needed for Africa, that basically riding in and out of going through those sensors and all the, the electronics actually enhances the stimulation of the stress that we don't recognize.
Well, but if you go through those body scanners, they fracture your DNA, period, end of story. It's a done deal. Because it's a giant radiation X-ray machine. And it's so high, and they don't have people actually to regulate it, that it actually damages your DNA from the get-go. So you don't have any way to repair yourself after the DNA is broken, after you go through one of those things.
All for the fear that somebody might want to make you a victim. That is just downright crazy.
Oh, yeah, but you see it more and more. Like today, I posted on Facebook a photo on Facebook. It took me like an hour to get it to post on Facebook. It just off my tablet. It just would not. It just kept refusing it because it knew it was a chemtrail photo. It's like no.
Oh,
so I finally get it up there, and my caption is the photo is I love how they spray lithium on us in the morning because they're the lithium clouds. They're kind of look feathery. And they started that like 6 years ago in Oregon. The Oregonians, Richard Allen Miller, when they were doing it, and he said that they found out that they were being experimented on by having lithium sprayed on them. So now they do it everywhere. And what's really scary is that lithium, even when people have mental problems and they're going to give people lithium, they don't give them huge doses of lithium because it's poisonous. It's a heavy metal. So, here they are spraying us with huge amounts of heavy metal to make us tired and lethargic. So we're not paying attention to what's going on because there's serious SHIT going on. And, you can have kidney failure, I think, from lithium poisoning.
Whoa.
Yeah, and brain damage and all kinds of stuff. But the whole sky was like totally sprayed with lithium today.
Okay, but does it dissipate or is there a shelf life?
It stays quite a while, and it can kind of whiten the sky too. And then, it probably floats away somewhere. Yeah,
well, think of rain, rivers, creeks, etc.
Yeah, because it's a heavy metal.
And then what's it doing to that kind of thing, the wildlife?
Well, and this other thing, too, is when I remember right. All right. Sorry, okay. I needed a little 420.
I don't have a problem with that. You can 420.
All right, so
I have too.
there's this hot springs, like one of my favorite hot springs in the whole United States, called Ojo Caliente. But I used to go there a lot more when it was more rustic. It was a very important place for the Indians. It's outside of Taos. And it's a very unusual place because it has arsenic water 0.06, which is homeopathic, and literally gets rid of, pain and everything. It has an iron water pool, and that's homeopathic too. And you can drink up to 2, I think, 8-ounce glasses even of the iron water. Helps with your blood and your hemoglobin. And then they have a soda water, bubbly water that you can sit in that really helps you, and you can drink it if you have a stomach ache or whatever else while you're sitting in it. And they had a water fountain that had at one time lithium water, and that came up naturally from the ground, and so you could drink up to 14 ounces of that per day. And they had signs. And now that it's more, rich and famous spot, no, they don't really have. They took out the lithium because they couldn't afford to have people, drinking it, because it's a medication, right? Medical doctors prescribe it as a medication.
Yeah,
so
don't take the profits, man.
Yeah. So, but before they took it all out, I tried the lithium water, and I drank probably about 6 hours, and I was like, woo! I can't shut up sometimes as it is. Sometimes I go through long, quiet periods where I don't talk to anybody for weeks. But I just couldn't shut up. I mean, I was just so jacked up, man, like, doo-ah, And so I was talking to one of the ladies there, and she said, oh, yeah, she said, people who don't have mental illness, it has like this charged effect on you. You get really happy, you get a lot of energy, you feel kind of clear, like you could go run a marathon, kind of a thing. I said, hell yeah, that's exactly how I feel. And she said, but people who are have mental illness where they're jacked up all the time, it's a downer for them.
Oh. Interesting.
So, yeah, so the thing is, like, you think, spraying, the atmosphere with it, some people could, the people who are not right and unstable, you know what I mean, that have a serious chemical imbalance, where the lithium would actually, put them down a little bit, kind of crash them out.
Right.
But it would stimulate other people to be overstimulated, which, could excite anger or whatever else.
Sounds like Ritalin, doesn't it?
It sounds like what?
Ritalin.
Yeah. Yeah, well, coffee, like I have friends that have mental illness where they're like super overstimulated and have some weird, mental functions, and they drink coffee and go to sleep.
Oh,
I drink like a cup of coffee and I'm like, let's go. Come on.
Drink my coffee like that, because I feel everything energetically, so my heart would be going racy if I had a cup of coffee from somebody else who made it different than me,
Yeah, well, yeah, I never use refined sugar. That will just set me right on off. And you know what else sets me off, like gives me heart palpitations and anxiety, is those fake creamers, that have the...
Don't even talk to me about those. That's so disgusting. They're killing off our bodies.
Yeah, that stuff is... I put a little bit of that in my coffee, and I am jacked up.
Okay, this is just too funny. You want to hear one of the reasons why I quit taking all this artificial existence? My husband at the time, because he's deceased now, he worked for the park system in St. Pete, Florida, called Nature Trail when I knew it. It's been there for decades. Old timers donated the land to the city to keep it a natural park. So I would go visit him. He was a carpenter in the campgrounds, and check on him because he usually worked by himself, a carpenter that works by yourself. One day he had a whole wall fall on him, and good thing I went to check on him. Anyway, so we would have the creamer, the powdered creamer with the coffee and the granulated sugar, the industrial kind you buy for offices, right? Because this is government run. So the one day I come back after the weekend and decide to make everybody coffee. I opened the container and it solidified. Bridgette, I couldn't burn it with a blowtorch. I couldn't cut it with a reciprocating saw, and you couldn't put it back into its original condition. Now just imagine what that's doing to the human body.
Yeah.
I freaked. That was it. I'm like, no more, no more, no more.
Yeah, no, I have one of my friends, he likes putting in his coffee. I told him, I said, have you ever tried using something else, like not putting that in your coffee and just seeing like the difference? Because he always has anxiety. He has anxiety about going to work.
Starving for the true nutrition.
Exactly.
Can of butter. Put can of butter in his coffee. Oh my gosh.
Wow, we know how you start out the day.
I'm telling you, sister. I didn't eat before my show, so my stomach was growling by the second hour, and I had my can of butter sitting here, and I had saltines, and I didn't care. I still did my show and flipping ate the saltines. It was one of those emergencies, because I eat when I'm hungry. Otherwise, my body will scream, yell, holler, and take advantage of me, and I don't like that.
Yeah, I'm irritable. Especially if my food is like attached to somebody else, I'll have them busy. They're like, "You're really cranky when you're hungry." I'm like, "Yeah, just wait. It's the only time I'm cranky." But I can yell. Get over there and get that done. I'm starving.
Well, I can't go that extreme because I know what it's like to not have the accessibility at the moment, so I can talk myself out of it. But it was just those moments that I couldn't talk myself out of it anymore. I had the ingredients sitting right here, so I'm like, okay. So real quick, I still did the show, and I'm sure you could hear me chewing on it while I was talking about.
Yeah. No,
I think we're at break at the top of the hour right now, Bridget.
Okay.
So I'll run out and have a cigarette and come right back. So how about?
Good. All right, I'll just hang out. I'll just hang out.
Be right back.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
Revolution Radio.
You don't see it, do you? How close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat asses, eating and drink themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. The shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out.
Not me.
Get it done.
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty work. www.freedomslips.com. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
I bet. Oh, not yet. All right, well, Mike's trying to give us the three-way in here. Let's see. Woo! So did you upgrade to the new Skype there, Bridget?
I did. It actually updated me twice, so that's why I've been having all this trouble on my show. I have to figure out a new way. Actually, it updated for me.
You didn't have it on lockdown where they weren't allowed?
No, they because my computer runs on apps. Everything I have is on apps. So I don't have an older computer or traditional computer anymore. So, yeah, it just kind of changes things a lot.
Yeah, because I have a 2008 I haven't even gone into because I don't want to see what they might have done. But I'm working off a Dell Windows 7 right now, and it's almost the original Skype.
Yeah, I had a laptop that was really old, and it had like all that stuff, and then once it died, and then I had to get the new one. A lot of these are applications that that download onto the computer.
They tried to do that to my phone. I about crap. I was so pissed off about that. Oh, you want Google, and that if you talk to your phone, I'm like, I don't want to talk to my phone. I want to talk through my phone. I want to use it as a phone. You know what I mean?
Yep, I know what you mean.
I didn't fall for it, but they're probably charging me extra because I'm not using that stuff.
Yep.
So any news about any information that you've heard about the regulations? Because you're almost in California, right?
The regulations for
the smart meters?
Oh, I have no idea what's going on with that right now. Because I was on a trip, I was on the road for 3 weeks, and then I just got back and I'm trying to organize. So there might be some information that I haven't really looked over, but somebody's got to do something about the smart meters and the 5G, and they're strapping those 5G units to water towers. And I'm not just talking like...
Are you kidding?
I'm just not talking one or two water tower on a water tower. There's like some of them in Sacramento have like 100 strapped all the way around it. 5G.
You're kidding. Why would you drink that water?
Well, the thing is like it's all the public water that they're doing it to. So like I don't drink public water, and I don't drink a lot of drinks anymore. Especially anything that's labeled from California, because they were the first ones to flip 5G. So I don't want anything water or anything made because it's highly radioactive, microwave radiation. I mean, it can even bring it to boiling temperatures.
Well, what good does that do?
Well, it doesn't do anything, but that's how they're killing us. It's another way that they're going to kill us. Because if you, so look at like little kindergartners where they do that test where, you know, they're given two like squash plants, and they're told to water one with the regular water, and then take your water and microwave it in the microwave oven, let it cool, and then water the other plant with microwave water. Well, that plant that gets water with microwave water is dead in like 3 days. And so people just can't put two and two together that these units, that, you know, maybe one unit is equivalent to, you know, 200 microwaves. You know, and there's 100 of them strapped all the way around. Like, I totally freaked out. I put an emergency like YouTube video out, like, you know, this is like a serious deal, people. This is like no brainer. Do not drink public water because you can't even go to the water store and get it filtered. You're not going to be able to filter that out. And, you know, if you're bathing
I
in
wonder
it.
what the shungite would do. But still, that's a future test.
Well, but this is the deal. I mean, you know, you're
It shouldn't
cooking
be
with it.
happening in the first place,
You're
Bridge.
cooking, right, but you're cooking with it. You're bathing in it. Purely, you're being totally microwave radiated if you take a bath in it.
Oh, heaven have mercy.
But I mean, it's like every direction. And, you know, people are not bothered. They're like, oh, yeah, dude, yeah. I mean, they have no idea that we're being murdered. And not just murdered from, like, murdered and medicated. And even those of us who are trying to stay healthy and stay away from all that stuff.
Right.
And they're at the point now where they're affecting us all. Because now that it's gone through the water system, you know.
That's despicable.
It is. And I'm just so shocked. I'm just so shocked at like how all these people, you know, like react to it. Like I'm living out in the desert. I drink well water that comes up, you know, probably has tons of, you know, amazing minerals in it. It tastes super good. It's from 800 feet down in the desert. And I really like it. I feel better drinking it. But, you know, so I take all my own water now with me and I pretty much just drink. You know, I try not to drink a lot of other stuff that's
isn't
made.
Nevada's water already radiated because they housed a bunch of the leftover stuff?
No, we didn't actually. Nevada had 5,000 nuclear bombs go off. And the way that the air current travels, it dragged it all from Las Vegas down their area, all the hot particles all the way up the state and then over into St. George, Utah. So that's the whole sweep of where all the heavy hot particles went and all of the radiation from those tests. So they didn't store any, you know, toxic or radioactive material in Nevada because of that. They have done it in, you know, Washington State got quite a bit of it. Pendleton, you know, all those kinds of areas got tons of it. And some of this material, and the only reason I know a lot about all this is because when I was living in Taos in 2006, there were the native Pueblos people, and that there's a lot of Pueblos. So they started putting their money into hiring researchers to watch the land, especially in the northern area because of Los Alamos nuclear plant, and they make nuclear weapons there. So the Hiroshima
They
bomb.
also do the germ warfare.
Well, I'm not really sure about that, but what happened is that in 2000, or I think in 1999, the Los Alamos plant caught on fire.
Right, I remember that.
And pretty much all of it burned down. So that released tons of heavy, you know, hot particles like plutonium and cesium and depleted uranium and all of those kinds of things. And so plutonium it's 200,000 years to neutralize. So it gets burned down in a building and it goes free. Just because the building burnt down does not kill the plutonium, right? And it turns it into a hot particle and releases it into the atmosphere. And then it can contaminate monstrous areas from just one little teeny nanoparticle of it.
Does it ever make you amazed that we've survived to this time?
Well, it gets crazy. So even the native people and everybody, like in northern New Mexico, saw like this yellow like haze and like yellow clouds in the sky, and you know the government wouldn't say anything about Los Alamos, wouldn't tell them the truth. So eventually the native people, the Pueblos, they put money together and they created a board to learn about nuclear stuff, and also they wanted to start watching the areas and going to the government and you know, doing FOIAs and stuff like that to get the government to tell them the truth about what had happened, and the government wouldn't do it at all. So what they decided to do is they hired their own scientists.
Nice.
That worked for the pueblos that would give them, the proper information. And so they bought all this equipment, up at 11,000 feet all over to just start doing their own testing of what's going on, trying to figure out what the radiation levels are and all this other stuff. And so then they would go back to the government and they would say, well, we still want some of that information. So maybe they might release a little bit of it and say, oh, these areas are now considered safe. And this is the rate of radiation in this area, from the whole fallout of Los Alamos. And then people would be like, well, that's not what our scientists are saying. It would be like, so much different and so much worse, what the native people were collecting.
So decimal.
Yeah. So then what happened was they have in the I have to get this right there because there's the Gila National Forest is at the south part of New Mexico. So the Jimenez. So it's right out of Los Alamos. It's a beautiful place. It has one of the largest calderas besides Yellowstone.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a gorgeous place. But it had a lot of lava beds there. So they started, putting all the Los Alamos nuclear waste there. I think they stopped putting it in there in like the 80s. And the containers, have basically been eaten through. And so now it's like a waste mess. And they're finding that a lot of it, the waste they're finding it in the Rio Grande. And so in 2008, Albuquerque, I believe it was 2008, they started to actually have to start pulling their public water out of the Rio Grande. And so it's like the plutonium is just going to make its way down, at some point. And those people are going to be drinking, heavily laced nuclear waste materials that, cesium takes 17,000 years to neutralize, uranium takes 600 years, plutonium's 200,000 years. And what's the other one that's really bad? Cesium, plutonium, uranium. I mean, they're all super bad.
Right.
Super bad. So you remember that spy? Remember that Russian spy that was murdered? Yeah. And they said they gave him a pin top. A pin top. That's how much plutonium that they gave him. And he got massive cancer all over his body and died in 6 weeks.
Yeah, that long, right. Nobody wanted to believe him. I believed him.
Yeah, so he was given a tip of just like a little tip of a needle worth of plutonium.
Right. Yeah, just a little prick.
Well, and look at Iraq's not doing well. 1 out of 10 babies is sort of born normal. I mean, because, the military, U.S. military has been using uranium in their dials on the tanks, in all the bombs and the bullets and everything. And so after the war, they just leave all that stuff there. They don't even clean it all up. So there's all this, depleted uranium all over the place. And you can go online. I forget what her name, Amy Goodman. I met her a long time ago in Taos, years and years ago. And anyway, she was the only one that was talking about it on Democracy Now! And if you go online and you look at the website, Babies, Iraq, Depleted Uranium, you'll just be shocked at the photos. I mean, the mutations are just unbelievable. Babies are born with like 1 eye, like just with like 7 limbs. You just can't even believe what has happened to their whole culture. It's like destroyed, completely destroyed their lineage. Their ethnicity, like completely wiped them out.
But that's disgusting.
Oh, it's horrific. I mean, it's unbelievably horrific, most horrific thing. And so I think like there was a period where they were telling people. I can't remember when it came out about the depleted uranium and the babies over there, but around the same time they were saying that you shouldn't use any gas that came from, places like Iraq where uranium was used in war, because they don't filter out the contaminants. And so if there was a lot of depleted uranium in that area and the oil absorbed it or whatever else, they're not going to clean a lot of it out. And then they're just going to put it into gas, and then, you put it into your car. And so they were saying, like, pregnant women should make sure not to buy gas from places that the gas is coming from the Middle East, because it could have uranium contamination, which could cause a mutation in the fetus.
Well, that could be natural gas or petroleum gas.
Yeah. So, it was kind of like a big deal.
Jeez.
And this is the other part. Oh my God. All right. This is another just feature of how sick it all is. Okay. So you have all these products, and a lot of the products are made for babies. And you have baby oil, you have Vaseline, gasoline. Get it? Vaseline.
Yes, I know. Yes.
Gasoline. Anyway. And you have all these other derivatives of petrochemical in a lot of the products that we use. So when they take it out of the ground, they don't refine it or filter it to get out toxins that would be highly toxic to people, right? But then they actually put it through the refinery process until they get it into, like, a baby oil or a Vaseline or whatever else that is going to be in the product. But so at the initial point where they take it out of the ground, it's not refined. So it could have all kinds of, like, heavy metals, radiation, all kinds of different things, just even naturally occurring that the oil was in, that they take it out of. And they don't purify it, but they do refine it into products. And so people are slathering their babies with, baby oil, which is mineral oil, which is petrochemical. I mean, it would be the same as, taking your, oil, your quart of oil, and just dumping it over the baby and, wiping them down with it.
Oh, I know. When I found that out years ago, that was it. I just couldn't take any more of it.
Well, the number one thing that it does in babies and adults, but more so in babies, is it lowers the white blood cell count down to a point where the baby can become super weak and sick, and they're not going to be able to figure out. What they're going to assume is that the medical testing will pull two things. It'll pull, when you have a low white blood cell count like that, you either have cancer or an infection. Right. So that's what they're going to test the baby for, is they're going to try to find an infection. They're going to see, put the baby through all these tests to see if the baby has cancer. And then in some cases they don't. But lowering that white blood cell count on them can cause all kinds of stuff. You take them to daycare, now they can get infected by anything.
Right.
Anything and everything. But, people just don't even get me started about EDTA, which even totally freaks me out even more in products. People should avoid EDTA like the plague.
I don't know what that is.
It has like a really long word, but EDTA basically is something that they use in chelation. So mostly, like, I think lead and maybe mercury and maybe aluminum. And so they put it in the chelation to strip out people who have had high exposure to heavy metals, that it's causing brain damage and, like, organ failure.
Okay.
And so the chelation, it strips it out. But it's only made to be used as emergency. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's just not something you're going to be using. Well, now they have forms of EDTA that they use as preservatives in food and in products. And basically, if you use, like, lotion and whatever else, soap that has EDTA in it, basically it's stripping, minerals and things like that, out of your body.
Right.
And you can start getting chemical sensitivity.
But that's just like the Purell or any of that stuff. It is destroying not enhancing.
Well, that's the thing. And so, like, I had a friend of mine who she had gotten lead poisoning. And this is kind of how I found out about EDTA. And so she wanted to come up from San Francisco and stay with me for a couple weeks. She said I had lead poisoning and I had to go through chelation. This is kind of a crazy story. So she rented a house in San Francisco, an older kind of house or condo or something. And she was there. She moved in, and over 3 weeks, she got sicker and sicker and sicker till she couldn't even get out of bed. She couldn't even see or anything.
No.
So she finally went to the hospital, and she found out she had lead poisoning. And she at one point she said she could hear people walking outside, and she thought, "Oh, this is it. I think I'm going to die now." Before they got her to the hospital, she said it was like that. She just was. In 3 weeks, it was just laid down and die from the lead poisoning. So she went to the hospital, and they were like, what have you been doing? Do you work at a chemical factory? Like, how in the hell could you have this kind of exposure? They're like, you have it respiratorily, you've ingested it, you've absorbed it through the skin. Every possible sample and test that we're taking is thoroughly infiltrated with lead.
Whoa.
She's just like, I have no idea. I'm a vegan. I have no idea where I would get lead poisoning. So anyway, the hospital ended up sending over, I think they call them,
forensic team, right?
Yeah, well but they call them, it's called something else. It's called, maybe I'll think of the word. Anyway, so they send them over to test everything. And so they find out everything has lead in it. And it's more like a particle, right? But it's everywhere. And then it comes out that the guy who painted the house, was a dumb contractor. So the owner had the house painted before she moved in, and he decided that he was going to sand all the walls, and it's like 1940s house, so all that stuff on way under all had lead in it. It was pure 100% lead paint. And so he decided to sand everything, all the walls and everything, and then repaint it instead of taking a putty knife and chiseling off parts.
Right.
And so that's how she got really, really sick from the lead poisoning and had to have the chelation. But anyway, so she said, "Hey, I want to come up and visit." I said, "Yeah, great." And she said, "But, I have chemical sensitivity now because of the EDTA and the chelation." And I was like, "All right, well, come up and we'll deal with it." And so I said, if we have to cook all the meals and we know where the food's coming from, that'll be fine. So at one point we were going to order a pizza or something, she'd been there a week. And so she said, "Well, just make sure and call around to find out, how their vegetables, So we're going online and we're looking at every restaurant and trying to find out in their ingredients if there's EDTA present. Because it turns out that businesses that don't cut their own vegetables,
right,
and probably, famous Murphy's Pizza, you can take out pizzas. A lot of these companies that get their stuff pre-cut, it's been soaked in EDTA because it can make, that carrot from going brown for 3 weeks. So they can cut them at the main factory of, the restaurant main place, and they soak them, and then they put them in containers and they ship them to the different restaurants, right?
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so they have a really long shelf life and they're super crispy. So she was telling me if she was to eat anything that had, so EDTA exposure, by putting it on your skin or spraying it on in a perfume or using the soap and most toothpaste, I've seen toothpaste that has EDTA in it. I've seen body soap. Trader Joe's, actually, most of their bathroom products like shampoo and soap all has EDTA in it.
Oh, geez.
So anyway, so I would have to call these restaurants because if she ate any little piece of morsel of food, within minutes, she would get burns, chemical burns around her lips and chemical burns in her mouth because she can't really deal with EDTA anymore because she had strong dosages of it to get rid of the lead. But she was saying like it's a cumulative. So all these people are using all these products, and then, you know, they get to this point where they have massive chemical sensitivity. You know, they can't smell anything, things make them itch. And it's from the EDTA. But the scary thing about the EDTA is that it never gets out of your system. Oh. So once your body has hit that wall where you have chemical sensitivity and everything makes you sick, you'll start to get, burns too, from eating stuff that has EDTA on it or putting it on your body. Yeah. So, and it was a trip to try to call these different restaurants, and it got to where I just said, you know what, I'll just go to the store and I'll get all the components and I'll just make us a homemade pizza, because at least I know that there's no EDTA or, you know, anything in it. But I called the Famous Murphy store, or, you know, where they make those pizzas for takeout and you take them home and cook them, and Pandas and that Asian Express and all these different places. And I'm like, can you tell me if you have EDTA in your food or not? And then it finally got to the question is, do you chop your own vegetables or are they pre-chopped? And they're like, well, we're not supposed to say that. And I'm like, okay, well, it's life and death. If we come down there and they're pre-chopped when you get them, I know that they're going to be soaked in EDTA. And if my friend eats them, she'll be hospitalized.
Right.
They're like, okay, well, yeah, they're pre-cut before we get them. So it was like, that's what it boiled down to, because they didn't know that it had EDTA. They didn't know what it was. They didn't know. So here you own a franchise. This really gets me. You own a franchise, and so that the main company sends you out your vegetables for your product, right? So that you can make your products, your food, or whatever else. Right. But never discloses what's in everything. And so how do you, I mean, you know, how are you a responsible business owner when the main company that you bought the franchise from is delivering all your stuff and you don't even know what's in it?
Right.
You know what's on it. You don't know where the food came from. You don't know what's in it. And you don't really know.
Well, was it you who sent me that video about the meat? And that meat has, like, ingredients, you know, like ground chuck or whatever they would call it, that there was some alien meat into it and they don't even know what it is.
Yeah, well, they're doing lab grown meat. Well, I mean, okay. Okay, so they're trying to get all these fast food restaurants to do lab grown meat, you know, so they take a little bit like of stem cells of the real meat or from the animal, and then they grow this meat in a lab. So they're using some of that, but there's been human meat prevalently found in places like McDonald's burgers, up to 11% at times, and other, horse meat, a lot of horse meat. That's why they like to round up all these horses around the desert, which we don't like that because they're part of the desert. You know, that's that's part of our native, you know, our Mustangs, and they're constantly. You know, now I'm starting to realize because they're using them, you know, for fast food restaurants. So they're making a lot of money. Somebody in the government is getting a boatload for, you know, stealing these horses under that they don't have good conditions. And so that they can sell them for meat. But the other thing, too, so I don't know, it must have been like 10 years ago. And there was it came out about Taco Bell. There was I think it was a guy who was writing. He was like writing his thesis or something like that, and so he decided to test the sirloin, supposedly ground beef that's in the tacos. So he got like, I don't know, a few tacos, and then he took them back to his lab and he broke it all down to find out what was in it. And he found that it was 95% wood particle and 5% like mostly horse meat, and the other meat was unidentifiable. So, but there's several ways that they could be actually buying sawdust and stuff like that from companies and turning it into a fake meat product, right, at the main center, because it goes out to the franchises. That could be how it got in there. But there's also, you know, how they deal with cattle. So I used to have a friend who was a big cattle rancher, and he was telling me, like, you just can't believe what these people try to sell you to feed your animals. It's like totally shocking. And he did grass pasture, and then supplemented in the winter with alfalfa, because they had pretty severe winters. But he said that they would come around, these farm salesmen, and they would try to sell him things like sawdust to feed his cows, corn, soybeans, and my friend's just like, well, cows don't eat that stuff. Well, the guy's like, well, they could.
They're putting it in our food. It's part of the pharmaceutical chain of deception.
Right. So, but what happens if you feed your animals that stuff, and whatever else that they're making in bulk that you can feed your animals? You feed your animals and they actually have disease. They're actually dying at the time that they actually slaughter them. They got it down to like a science. So he was saying that this farm salesman guy was trying to sell him a whole bunch of sawdust from like a wood company. And he's like, well, why would I buy all that? And he said, well, to feed your cows. And he goes, I'm not going to feed my cows sawdust. He goes, people actually do that. He goes, oh, yeah, it's big business. We sell a lot of sawdust. And they feed the cows the sawdust. And he just was like totally shocked. So he said to me, he goes, remember that Taco Bell thing? He goes, maybe the company wasn't buying the sawdust and making sawdust into sirloin. He goes, maybe the parts of the cow that they were using came from farms that actually they were feeding them sawdust, and so when it got all grounded up, it was mostly sawdust, because that was mostly what was in the animals, parts that they would grind up to use as food.
Yeah, well, that would mean the stomach, but they don't eat wood, they eat grass.
Well, I'm just saying. So
it reminds you of the mad cow when they were feeding the cows meat.
Yeah, no, they were taking other cow meat and making pellets, like dog food for cows. But the other thing too is, there's also a doctor friend of mine, and we had a long conversation about this. She said, in America, you don't just have to worry about things like mad cow, but farm salmon, she said, is a serious problem, because if salmons get sick, they're all in the same area. They will cannibalize the salmon that is sick and dies. So they will get the disease as well. So she said it's the same thing as mad cow, right? If you were to eat, if you got something from the farm salmon. And so anything that cannibalizes, its same,
right.
Its same self, or, there's always going to be huge diseases. There's always going to be serious trouble and problems.
Well, that makes me cringe.
Yeah. And this other thing too, like if you have chickens, a lot of people, and I thought this was perfectly normal because family members of mine, did this, but it's a really bad practice to feed your chickens the chicken eggs shells back.
Oh, really?
Because it's cannibalization.
Huh.
So,
it makes sense to me, but it's like, oh.
Yeah.
They try to tell you should feed it to them.
Yeah, and you shouldn't, because they're cannibalizing. I mean, it's cannibalism on a certain level. And any type of cannibalism, has long-term consequences for the animals, and then the diseases that they're going to get that aren't going to be normal.
Well, what about the other animals that eat the ones that are sick and need to be out of the system?
Well, I mean, it's one thing if it's not your species.
Oh, right, but it is their species.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure like an alligator, probably not that big of a deal. But I think it's more so, problematic when it ends up in the food supply for humans.
Right.
Or your dog, or, things like that. I mean, there shouldn't be any of those kinds of practices, when you're dealing, especially nowadays, because now more than ever, we have so many diseases that cross, more people than ever have dogs, more people than ever have cats. So they're getting vaccinated. So now we have diseases that are cross-speciesing, And they said, I was reading this article that this PhD vet researcher lady wrote, and she said, a lot of the evidence supports that because of all these vaccinations with the cats and the dogs and all this other stuff, and that they're shedding the viruses off and people are getting some of their kinds of viruses, that it's really opened the door for cross-species viruses. And that's really bad for humans.
Well, isn't that even Ebola? Didn't that first come from elephants that were dead?
I don't know about that. I don't know exactly. I mean, you know, anything that's dead, that's large and dead. I mean, people, you know, one of the main things that happens is with cholera, when there you have a lot of people that are dying, and it travels really fast. It can be waterborne.
Right.
So yeah, any kind of death that isn't like buried or burned or anything like that can be a major serious problem.
Well, I mean, I could be mistaken, but I remember for some reason that is what I heard. And it's like leukemia. How do cats get leukemia? And it's because it's a cancer and something has happened that misfires their immune system.
Well, and it's been proven again medically through medical research that the major type of leukemia that humans are getting is related to the leukemia that the cat has, that they're actually getting the leukemia from the cat. And there's like 3 other major health things that you can also get from cats bacterial-wise. So
it make you want to believe and to utilize more of your inner spirit in the programming of your vehicle so you can transmute all these toxins?
Well, I just stay away from where those toxins might be. I eat the best I can, and within my means, and I feed my dog the best I can, and within her means, and I watch her parasite levels. And I mean, tomorrow I'll have our neighbor here. She is a really awesome horse lady, but I go over and get fresh horse turds periodically to feed the dogs. And, you know, people were freaking out when they first saw that here. And I'm like, there's so many microbes and things that they need. And she feeds her horses also essential fatty acids. She doesn't give them any kind of, Western medicine. She doesn't do any of that stuff. So these poops are like super clean. So I give them an inoculation, right? That helps to make their system better. Especially it works really well with the chemtrail stuff. They start getting kind of respiratory and fluidy from the chemtrails, and I can give them several turds, and within a couple days it helps to kind of balance that out so that they don't get a respiratory virus.
Interesting. Now, why do you think that occurs?
What do you mean?
Well, there's got to be some kind of system to the idea that, you feed the animal and other animals' remnants.
Well, it has to be a grass-fed animal's remnants, and it has to be a clean grass-fed animal remnants. But what it has is all the microbes. It has all those microbes and bacteria in there, and so it'll refortify the gut. I mean, I've seen horses, when I've gone out and worked on horses, eat their own poop or eat the other horse's poop, take a couple bites, because they're refortifying their, microbial processes in their body.
All right. Well, I just am not in favor of me personally eating human feces, but...
No, I don't think... But, what do they do with it medically? Like, I have a friend of mine that got really, really sick, and one of the things they said, because she had, like, diarrhea super bad, and so she had, like, no microbes and stuff in her gut anymore, and they said, there's just... So they were going to inject some other person's poop in there to re-inoculate her colon.
Interesting.
I'm like, that would be... I don't want other people's blood, and I don't want other people's shit.
Yeah, I know, right? Me neither. Yeah,
I'll pass.
Yeah.
I'll just pass on that.
I'll agree. Just because. I mean, I always thought that, saving the urine and drinking it, because they say it builds T cells. I'm like, that's your toxins that you just flushed out of your body. Yeah. Why would you ingest that?
I know.
That makes no sense to me.
No, it's super disgusting. It's another super disgusting thing.
I mean, you can collect water out of a desert or something. You don't have to get that, you know. But, oh gosh. It's just amazing. But what I meant and what I wanted to say also about this, the smart meter, okay, is my friend in Washington State. He's the Shungite B guy. So we trust his judgment and what he's doing and everything because he's a success, actually. And he's at home, and his daughter hears this noise outside of the house, and his smart meter started crackling and sparking. Well, he didn't know it was a smart meter because he had just bought the house, and he didn't look to see what it was or not. So he runs downstairs to throw the circuit breaker, to shut the electric off at the house, right? So they can't draw any more energy from wherever, because that used to be the old way that these things worked, right? You shut down your power to the house, it's shut down. Well, it kept going. The lights stayed on. Everything was being run by that now interfaced, sooted, on fire smart meter. So he's calling the fire department, right? Well, the fire department brought out all their equipment and did all that and saw that the wall was 350 some degrees and building more heat. That's when they found out that the power to the smart meter, you can't shut it off.
Yeah.
And so, all of a sudden, thank goodness, for some reason, there was a power company guy just happened to have a bucket truck that can cut the power from the house, from the pole, because it wasn't going to stop unless it stopped coming from the pole. So, come to find out, the power company is saying it's his responsibility to take care of the cost of the meter and the cost of the parts that were affected through this fire that, didn't thankfully engulf the rest of the whole house or whatnot. But by all standards, they aren't going to make any restitution to their meter going haywire.
Right, because basically their legal stuff, I've read a lot of it, it says that, basically if anything happens, it's not going to be, the smart meter's fault or whatever. But this is the other deal. In California and Nevada and some other states, the fire departments have actually fought off. They've, they try to put cell phone towers on the firefighters, property where they temporarily live. They fought those off. Then they fought off the, smart meters that they refused because they saw how many fires that they caught. How stupid would that be, that you have a smart meter on the fire department and it catches on fire?
Right.
So they in court fought off not having smart meters on the firehouses, and now they're in a huge battle against 5G because they're trying to put these little 5G things. They want to put them on top of the firehouses, right? And they're now in court. A lot of the firemen are in court fighting that off, kind of stuff, And the thing is, we're not taught about a lot of this in the general public.
Right.
But you can go back to. You can order your own analog machine, the one that was on there before, you get a brand new one, and they charge you to install it, and then they charge you a little bit more every month because they have to send a meter reader to read it.
Right.
But I don't want to live in any kind of building that has a smart meter on it. That's why I kind of live in my van in a shed. I just don't want to have anything to do with any of that stuff.
Oh, I don't blame you. In fact, I gave one of the electric guys who wanted to come out and put a meter in that was being read from space when there's already a smart meter on there. So I have to talk the guy into who owns the house to think about getting it back to the analog. But it's kind of difficult when there's other ingredients involved that makes people not think straight. So,
Yeah, well, the thing is there was a great interview today on the X22, and the guy's name was, I can't remember. But if you go to the X22 for today, It's on there under the Spotlight, X22 Spotlight interview. And the guy is really smart and knows about a lot of the financial stuff. But one of the things he kept saying over and over again was that, you know, his opinion has changed over 5 years to what it was because people are so dumbed down, especially like in the United States. And I've heard other people in the economics arena say that before, you know, like, because they're coming out interviewing, you know, like, people better watch out, you better know what's going on, and you know, trying to help people whistleblow. And they're just like, people, that Americans are the dumbest people. This one guy actually point blank said, he said, I do economics and, you know, currencies and all kinds of stuff and stock markets and all this other stuff worldwide. And he said, I have to tell you, Americans are the dumbest people in the world. He said, because they don't know. And so this guy on the Spotlight today basically said that. He said before, he thought that as soon as people started to see that the currency was going to collapse, that other markets in the world were collapsing, that they would start pulling their monies off the market, maybe buying silver and gold and all this other stuff. He said, but now his whole thing about that has changed. And he believes that, you know, these people are not even going to notice until it's gone. And they don't have anything in the bank account. They can't get into the banks, you know, because that's, you know, where we're headed.
Well, I can only do what I'm able to do without worrying about it, because there's not much I can do.
Well, the thing is, I mean, there's a difference, though. I mean, talking about it is not worrying about it. Like a lot of people say, oh, you're talking about it, it's like doom and gloom. No, because I'm not attached to it.
Right.
You know, I have a food storage for 6 months easily. I have a food storage for my dog for 6 months. I'm living in a place that I can get water from underneath the ground at 800 feet. I'm living outside of town.
Right.
I'm not in town, and I have the ability to grow stuff, and I've got a seed vault, and, you know, I have all these things. So I tell people, like, just because I'm telling you this doesn't mean that it scares me or whatever else is going to happen. I'm not worried about it. But people, I think, also think that they shouldn't talk about it because it makes them, you know, it makes them have negative energy in their field. And it's like, but if you're claiming that you're conscious and awake, wouldn't you notice, or wouldn't you even read the articles that were coming out that these planes are landing that have sick people on them and they're not really sure? I mean, would that just be like, duh? Like, maybe you should read that article instead of being like, it's so doom and gloom, and then there's like a huge Ebola outbreak.
The whole situation is, if that's the way they see it, that's the way it becomes, not the other way around. You gotta beware. You gotta be aware. I mean, come on. Are you serious? That's ridiculous. To be that much fear-laden that they can't see the facts for the facts that they are. And that's funny. That's really funny.
Yeah, and I'm like, I want to know, because I want to know what's going on. I mean, I might not want to drive in town and do banking tomorrow because, you know, there's something crazy going on in town. I mean, look, did you see the footage? I don't have TV, but I was watching it at a friend of mine's house last night, and they had the news on, and they showed that footage, all kinds of different people's footage from their cameras mostly. They got stuck on I-5 and down below, I think kind of down by Los Angeles, and everything just caught on fire spontaneously because they're having those Santa Ana winds. Well, it took off so far that, I mean, it just literally was a flash blaze, and people were like trapped in their cars. I mean, some people had to like get out of their cars and run back up the highway. They ended up closing 40 miles of the I-5. And it happened all of a sudden, and there was like tankers that burnt down to the ground. There was cars, and there were people in the car going, I don't know what I should do, showing the fire and stuff. Bitch, get your tennis shoes on and flee. Yeah, what do you mean? Right. Your car is going to catch on fire. And then there were like even dumber people they were like, they they're like keep kind of going with the traffic, but it was going like really slow, and they were going to go through like the major part of the fire. And I was thinking to myself, leave the car, grab what's important and what you need, and run the other direction.
Go the other way you came. That's how they do it in Florida when you got to get all the traffic out of the area real fast.
But this was before anybody showed up onto the scene. It went so fast, ba-boom.
Right.
And, I mean, there was fire across the whole highway, the whole side of the, I mean, it was like, it just happened, it happened, and people got stuck in it, but they had no idea what to do. And, you know, that's the thing about, like, people think they're conscious, but they're not aware.
Right.
And, you know, you got to be aware of what's going on in your surroundings. You know, you got to be totally aware about what's going on.
Well, especially if shit like that's coming down. Oh my gosh, that'd be like not watching for a tornado.
Yeah.
You know, but still, I just see a lot of this as being manifested.
Well, the thing is like, you know, things come down.
Shasta one, right? The Shasta and Redding?
Shasta, yeah. Well, the Redding fire was different. They had two fires kind of in that area. One was the Whaleback, and I was actually at my friend's house when we actually got mandatory evacuation. We had to get out of there. And then there was the Carr fire, and I was only up at her house by Eagle Lake for like 2 hours, and then all of a sudden they just came in and were like, you know, you guys got to get the heck out of here.
They literally came in person?
Yeah, and then the siren went off and we had to like mandatory evacuate.
Interesting.
So, and there was a major fire. It ended up being a major fire, really hard for them to get out. I mean, so the Carr fire was not too far away from that one, which just got put out, I think, like yesterday. It burned for like a month.
You're kidding, one car?
Yeah, they said, this is what they said. I think it's 5G. I think that they're electronic fires. And I've watched a lot of things on other people going into those areas and showing proof that it was more of an electronic fire than it was an actual fire.
Right.
And so I think all these, you know, because 5G went up full in across California in May. So where is the state where most of the fires are?
California right now. Well, it was Washington and Oregon. Now it's Northern California.
Well, no, we had, I mean, when the Carr fire started, or 2 weeks into the Carr fire, there were 17 fires in California. And I think it went up to like, you know, 25 or something like that across California.
Oh, God.
And from the top to the bottom, all the way up and down.
Well, do you got that one thing I sent you about California sinking, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, you can't take stuff out of the ground. And this is the thing with fracking that totally freaks me out, that they do any kind of fracking. You know, they take stuff out of the ground. So they take that pressure out of the ground, you know. So my native teacher, Bobido, who died in June 2016, he said, you know, the way that this planet was originally designed was that it was, you know, stabilized perfectly. So you have these crystals here and this here and this here, and everything does its job. And he said, like oil under the ground, it actually helps to lubricate the plates so that, you know, the planet doesn't get stuck and the machinery doesn't get stuck. And then, you know, it has to break apart, you know, in a really savage way and kill.
Well, it creates gravity. Who knows?
Right. So there's a lot of things that are happening. But he said, you know, the more that we bleed out, the more that we take out, the more, you know, massive problems we're going to have, because you can't just take all this stuff out of pockets and holes and expect the top layer here of the soil to hold on. And, you know, you think about that, like all those giant sinkholes. Like nobody's talking about them anymore, but I mean, I think in Russia there was like a whole, you know, like 4 block, or not a 4 block, but you know,
I've seen it. It does look like a corner block. Yeah, I agree.
Well, no, but that whole hotel went into the sinkhole. It like fell into the sinkhole like a whole hotel. So they have all these sinkholes worldwide that nobody wants to talk about. And then they have all these cracks, right? The San Andreas, well, there was all these cracks in Sacramento that people are getting in their houses.
Really?
On the floor. Oh, yeah. And I was looking at something from Africa, and they said that, God, I can't remember the part of Africa. It's on the east side, but the crack now has cracked all the way off, that this whole area of Africa now is like separated from the main part of Africa because of this crack that has been getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Well, I'd say the earth is growing then some, huh?
No, it's from everything that's being taken out of the everything sinking.
Oh, yeah, the unlevelness of it. I think a place in Peru, supposedly a whole town fell into itself.
Yeah, so I mean, the thing is like, the top part here can't, the top part that we live on cannot, stay up if everything that's drained from the inside and used, and there's nothing to put in there.
Yeah, well, they think they're putting all those chemicals back into the aquifers and using all that crappy space after they suck out the gas. That's okay.
Yeah, well, for years and years and years, think about how much oil that's been used, that they now, in some places, they fill the hole back up with seawater because they realize you could have like a major earthquake or a major collapse by taking all that oil out of, a hole and not having anything else to fill it up. But those are more newer practices, Oh, we're at the end.
All righty, darling. I appreciate you joining me this Friday evening. People, don't forget for this.
Bye.
Thank you, Bridgette.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Revolution Radio.
You don't see it, do you? How close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat asses, eating and drink themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. The shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out. Not me. Get it done.
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty work. www.freedomslips.com.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We've got to stop them! They're going to kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio of freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right! You tell them I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio! The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution